Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're not just looking at a company, we're looking at a phenomenon.
That's a good way to put it.
We're dissecting an entity that is so massive, so pervasive, and so, deeply entrenched in the daily rhythm of the Philippines that you literally, and I mean that, literally cannot function in the country without paying them money at some point in your day.
It sounds like hyperbole when you say it like that, doesn't it? But if you really break it down, if you look at the data, it's not an exaggeration at all.
Not at all.
If you woke up today in Manila, took a shower, maybe using water that passed through one of their infrastructure projects, if you ate a hot dog for breakfast.
Cure Foods, probably.
Right. Drove to work on an expressway, paid a toll, flipped on a light switch, or even flew out of the country. You have had multiple touch points with the subject of today's dive.
We are talking, of course, about San Miguel Corporation. And I think for 90% of our listeners, maybe more, when I say San Miguel, the brain immediately goes to one specific image.
The brown bottle.
The brown bottle. The steamy condensation on the outside. The samahan. The karaoke party.
Which is, in many ways, the brand's greatest triumph and, frankly, its greatest magic trick. Because while you're looking at that beer bottle, captivated by decades of marketing about friendship and camaraderie,
right,
the company behind it has quietly, methodically evolved into something that looks less like a beverage company and more like a state within a state.
That is exactly our mission today. We were going to peel back the label. We're going to trace how a single, almost gentlemanly brewery, founded way back in 1890 under a Spanish royal grant.
Royal grant, no less.
How that transformed into this diversified behemoth that basically acts as a proxy for the entire Philippine economy.
And we really want to stress we aren't just listing dates and acquisitions. We have a stack of source material here, corporate histories, legal documents, news archives, that reads less like an annual report and more like, I don't know, a season of Game of Thrones.
I was thinking the same thing. We're talking boardroom coups, political exiles, the government seizing massive chunks of the company.
And a strategic pivot in the 2000s that just baffled Wall Street, it baffled everyone, but it ended up literally changing the physical landscape of the country.
The aha moment we're driving toward is this. By the end of this hour, you're going to understand why the beer is actually the least interesting thing about San Miguel today.
It's almost a rounding error in their financials now.
Exactly. You're going to see how a fight between two cousins in the 1980s set off a chain reaction that directly resulted in the airport you might be flying out of next year.
It's a wild, wild story of survival, ambition, and incredible foresight.
So let's get into the time machine. We're going way, way back. We're going to the twilight of the Spanish colonial era, specifically to a very precise date, September 29th, 1890.
And that date is not a coincidence. It's very intentional. September 29 is Michael Chumasus. It is the feast day of St. Michael the Archangel.
Yeah, San Miguel.
San Miguel. In the Catholic tradition, St. Michael is the warrior angel, the leader of the heavenly armies against evil. So the name itself, La Fábrica de Cerveza San Miguel, it's meant to sound grand. It's meant to sound powerful from the very beginning.
And the man with the plan is Enrique Maria Barreto de Casa y Esteban.
That's a mouthful of a name for a man with a very, very singular vision. He's not just some random entrepreneur, he's connected. He secures a royal grant, specifically a charter from the Spanish government to open a brewery.
So this isn't a startup in the modern sense. This has the literal stamp of approval from the crown.
It has the imprimatur of the colonial power, and he sets up shop in the San Miguel district of Manila. Now, for those who know Manila geography, this is historically significant. It's right near Malacañang Palace.
The seat of power.
The absolute seat of power. So it seems like they've been close to the center of gravity from day one.
Now, digging into the archives, there is a fascinating detail about this original facility. We think of it as a brewery, period. But the source material points out it was actually a dual-purpose facility. It had two distinct sections.
Yes, this part is brilliant. One section was for beer, obviously, but the other was for ice.
And we have to pause here because in 2026, the idea of a factory for ice sounds, quaint.
It sounds trivial, but you have to explain why that is a massive, massive deal. This is 1890. We are in the tropics. It's hot. It's humid. There is no air conditioning. Refrigeration is a bizarre fantasy for the average person.
So if you wanted something cold, what were your options?
You had to import blocks of ice, believe it or not, from the United States, from New England, packed in sawdust on huge ships, or you'd rely on very primitive, inefficient cooling methods.
So ice isn't just a convenience, it's a status symbol, it's a luxury good.
It was the ultimate luxury, and this plant had a daily capacity of 5 tons of ice. 5 tons. So right out of the gate, San Miguel established a psychological foothold in the Filipino consciousness.
How so?
They weren't just selling you a buzz with beer. They were selling you relief. They were selling you coldness in a sweltering tropical country. It's a genius move.
That's a great insight. They weren't in the beer business, they were in the comfort business.
Yeah.
And from a technical standpoint, they didn't start small, did they?
No. This is one of the key takeaways about San Miguel's DNA, and it's there from the beginning. They don't do small. Barreto didn't set up a backyard craft brewery.
No.
He built the first brewery in all of Southeast Asia to utilize modern industrial-scale equipment imported from Europe. In the very first year of operation, they pumped out 47,000 cases of lager.
That is huge volume for the 19th century. I can't even imagine the logistics.
It completely crushed the competition, which at the time was just imported beer. By 1896, so just 6 years in, they were outselling all imported beers combined 5-1.
A 5-to-1 ratio.
They effectively monopolized the market before the revolution against Spain even fully kicked off. They even won a product quality award at the Exposition Regional de Filipinas in 1895. They were the undisputed king almost immediately.
But as with all great startups, the founder eventually steps aside, Barreto retires, and we see the entrance of families that, they basically constitute the royalty of Philippine business history.
This is where the genealogy gets really interesting for anyone who follows Philippine business. The leadership transitions to a man named Pedro Pablo Roxas. And if you follow the country's history, the Roxas and Zobel de Ayala families are titans. They're the landed gentry, the old money.
Establishment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By 1913, following the death of Roxas, the company formally incorporates as San Miguel Brewery, Inc.
And let's look at the numbers for 1913, because this blew my mind when I read it. Imported beer, by this point, made up only 12% of consumption in the Philippines.
Meaning San Miguel had the other 88%.
88% market share.
That is total, complete dominance. It's a monopoly in everything but name. And that single fact is crucial for the listener to understand for the rest of this story. Because that monopoly created a river of cash. Unending, reliable, predictable cash flow. And when you have that much cash and you've already conquered the beer market, you start looking for other things to do with it. Other worlds to conquer.
Which brings us perfectly to section 2 of our deep dive, the Soriano era. This is really the golden age of the company when it becomes a conglomerate we recognize.
Roughly from 1918 to 1983. This entire era is defined by one man and later his son. The man is Andres Soriano Sr.
Now, did he inherit the throne immediately? Was he the crown prince?
Surprisingly, no. He had the bloodline. He was a grandson of Pedro Pablo Roxas, but the sources note he started as a clerk. An accounting clerk.
So he worked his way up.
He had to learn the business from the ground up. He didn't officially become president until 1939, but make no mistake, he was effectively pulling the strings and shaping strategy well before that.
And this is where we see the company morph from just the brewery to the conglomerate.
Right. And I want to unpack the strategy here because it's brilliant. It's what business schools today would call vertical and horizontal integration. But Soriano was doing it intuitively before the terms were trendy. He looked at his core business and asked, what am I paying other people for that I could be doing myself?
Give us an example.
Okay, so you make beer. What's the biggest physical input you need besides the ingredients? You need bottles, millions of them. So instead of buying bottles from a supplier and being subject to their prices,
you build your own glass plant.
Exactly. San Miguel built a glass plant. What else? You need boxes to put the beer in, so they built a carton plant. You need crowns for the bottles. They built a plant for that, too.
Smart. You control your entire supply chain.
Yeah.
You insulate yourself from price shocks. And, more importantly, you lower your costs.
Precisely. Then he looked at the byproducts. When you ferment beer, what do you produce? Yeast. Instead of just throwing it away, they processed it, packaged it, and sold it.
Okay, that's clever.
Fermentation also produces a huge amount of carbon dioxide. What other popular beverage needs carbon dioxide?
Soft drinks.
So that leads directly to the Royal Soft Drinks Plan in 1922. It was practically free money. They already had the bottling lines from the beer, they had the delivery trucks, and now they had a free source of CO2. Making soda was a no-brainer.
And then in 1925, they bought the Magnolia ice cream plant.
Because they were already the Ice Kings, remember?
It all connects back.
Synergy upon synergy. They had the refrigeration technology mastered. They had the beginnings of a distribution cold chain. Ice cream was the next logical step to leverage that expertise.
Yeah, and the big one, 1927.
This was a monster deal. They secured the exclusive rights to bottle and distribute Coca-Cola in the Philippines.
That must have been a license to print money.
It was a cornerstone of their revenue for nearly a century. They were just squeezing every last ounce of value out of their core competencies. And you see, they weren't just diversifying randomly. They weren't buying a hotel or a farm. They were diversifying around their existing strengths in logistics, manufacturing, and distribution.
It's masterclass in strategy. Then World War II happens. The Philippines is devastated. Soriano actually serves as a colonel in the USASE and becomes an aide to General MacArthur. But let's jump to the post-war period. There's a specific event in 1953 that I want to clarify because it confuses travelers to this very day.
Oh, yes, the two San Miguels.
The Great Schism.
Yes, this is the ultimate cocktail party fact. If you go to London or Madrid or anywhere in Europe today and you order a San Miguel,
You are not drinking a product from the company we are discussing.
zero corporate relation, none.
How did that divorce happen?
In 1953, Andres Soriano Sr. signed something called the Manila Agreement. It was essentially a franchise deal. It allowed a Spanish company, La Cigarra, to brew and sell beer under the San Miguel name and recipe in Spain and other parts of Europe.
So it's a licensing deal?
Initially, yes. But over the following decades, San Miguel Philippines slowly reduced its stake in that European entity. And by 1983, they sold the last of it. Today, the European San Miguel is owned by the Mahu San Miguel Group, a Spanish beer giant. Totally independent companies.
So if you're on a beach in Ibiza drinking a San Miguel, not a single cent of that goes to the Philippine conglomerate.
Not one. It's a completely different company now, though they share that same origin story from 1890.
Okay, that's clear. Now, moving to the 1960s, Andres Soriano Sr. passes away in 1964. His son, Andres Soriano Jr., takes the helm.
And Soriano Jr. was the modernizer. His father built the empire, and he professionalized it. He was very much a modern, Harvard-educated executive. He decentralized the management structure.
What does that mean in practice?
Before him, the company was a bit of a monolith, with all decisions flowing from the top. He broke it down into divisions with their own presidents. The beer division, the food division, the packaging division. This made the giant ship easier to steer and more responsive.
And he also gave us the logo we see today, right?
He did. The famous escudo, or shield logo, that was introduced in 1975. It replaced the older, more classical-looking seal.
But the Soriano Jr. era wasn't just about corporate restructuring. It was about war. The beer wars of the early 1980s.
This is legendary stuff in Philippine business circles. For almost 100 years, San Miguel was the only game in town. They were untouchable. Then, a tycoon named Lucio Tan enters the picture with his new company, Asia Brewery. And he does something incredibly, unbelievably audacious.
You didn't just try to make a new beer. He made a clone.
An almost perfect clone. He released a beer called Beer.
Just beer. The label said beer, not beer.
Literally, beer that is beer. The bottle shape was almost identical to the iconic San Miguel Pilsen stubby bottle. The label color scheme was suspiciously similar. The taste was reverse engineered to be as close as possible.
This strategy was pure confusion.
Absolutely. He wanted people in a noisy bar or a dimly lit store to just grab a beer, thinking it was a San Miguel, but at a slightly lower price point. It was brilliant and ruthless.
And San Miguel, this gentlemanly company with a Spanish royal grant and a century of history,
Yeah.
they didn't take the high road, did they?
Oh, absolutely not. The gloves came off immediately. The sources detail some incredibly aggressive, almost street-level tactics. There were widespread reports of San Miguel sales teams allegedly going to stores, buying up all the competitors' empty bottles and smashing them in the street.
Why?
Because back then, breweries relied on collecting and reusing their bottles to keep costs down. By destroying Asia Brewery's bottle supply, San Miguel was directly driving up their production costs. It was ruthless.
That is just...
It was a street fight. They poached Asia Brewery's German brewmaster. They allegedly leaned on distributors to drop the new brand. It was a clear message. San Miguel was a sleeping giant, and you did not want to wake it up.
But while they were fighting the beer wars out on the streets, a much more dangerous and ultimately more consequential war was brewing inside the boardroom. This brings us to Section 3, the boardroom battle, and the Cojuangco takeover.
This is the pivot point. This is the moment the entire history of the company and arguably the country's economy changes forever. If you were writing a movie about San Miguel, this is the climax of Act Two.
Okay, set the scene for us. It's 1983.
It starts as a family feud, a Shakespearean clash. On one side, you have Andre Soriano Jr., the chairman, the son of the empire builder. On the other, you have his cousin, Enrique Zobel.
And Zobel wasn't just any cousin.
Not at all. He was a titan in his own right. He was the president of Ayala Corporation, one of the country's other great conglomerates, and he was the vice chairman of the San Miguel board. These are two of the most powerful men in the Philippines.
Two titans. Blood relatives. What went wrong?
The dispute boiled down to one word: transparency. Zobel started asking uncomfortable questions in board meetings. He wanted to see the details of the management contracts between San Miguel Corporation and a company called Anscor.
And Anscor was?
A management company that was privately owned by the Soriano family.
Ah. So Zobel suspected the Sorianos were using Anscor to siphon money or charge excessive fees from the publicly listed San Miguel.
He was concerned about potential sweetheart deals. He argued that as vice chairman, he had a fiduciary duty to all shareholders to ensure the contracts were fair. Soriano refused to open the books. He basically said, "Trust me, I'm family, we've always done it this way." Zobel's response was, in essence, "That's not good enough."
Right. So Zobel decides to launch a hostile takeover against his own cousin.
He tries. He starts a proxy battle, trying to rally other shareholders to his side. He starts buying up shares on the open market, but he couldn't get the numbers. He couldn't muster the votes to oust Soriano.
So what does he do?
Out of frustration, or maybe cold calculation, Zobel did the unthinkable. He decided if he couldn't win, he would sell his entire stake and walk away.
And he didn't sell it to a neutral party. He didn't sell it to an investment bank.
No. He sold his massive 19.5% stake in San Miguel to Eduardo Danding Cojuangco Jr.,
who was a very well-known associate and crony of then-President Ferdinand Marcos.
This single transaction changed the trajectory of Philippine business history. Cojuangco took that 19.5% block and then executed a brilliant and controversial pincer move.
How so?
He used funds from the Coconut Industry Investment Fund, the CIF, to buy an additional 31% block of shares from a disillusioned shareholder.
We need to slow down here and explain the CIF because this is the heart of the Coco Levy controversy. We have to be very precise and impartial here based on the legal records. How did this work?
Okay, here are the mechanics. The Marcos administration imposed a levy, which is essentially a tax on coconut farmers for every kilo of copra they sold.
And the stated purpose of this tax?
The stated purpose was to develop the coconut industry, to stabilize prices, and provide benefits and insurance for the farmers themselves. These funds were collected and deposited into a specific bank, the United Coconut Planters Bank, or UCPB.
And who controlled UCPB?
Danding Cojuangco was the president of UCPB.
So Cojuangco uses the funds collected from millions of small coconut farmers, which are sitting in the bank he controls, to buy a 31% stake in San Miguel Corporation.
That is what the court records show. And when you combine that 31% with the 19.5% he bought from Enrique Zobel, Cojuangco suddenly controlled the majority of the Philippines' largest and most prestigious company.
And the Soriano family.
The Soriano family, who had run the place for the better part of a century, were suddenly reduced to a tiny minority stake, around 3%. They were effectively wiped out.
That is a stunningly fast and brutal takeover.
It was a boardroom coup of the highest order, but it came with a massive legal asterisk that would hang over the company for decades. Who actually owned that 31% stake?
Right. Did Cojuangco own it personally? Or did the coconut farmers, whose money was used to buy the shares, own it?
And this legal battle raged through the courts for 30 years. To fast forward to the resolution, the Philippine Supreme Court, specifically in a case known as Civil Case Number 33 and the later CocoFed versus Republic case, eventually ruled definitively that the levy funds were public funds.
Meaning?
Meaning, the San Miguel shares that were bought with those funds belonged to the government to be held in trust and used for the benefit of the coconut farmers and the coconut industry.
But back in 1984, that Supreme Court ruling was years and years away. Cojuangco was firmly in the driver's seat. Andre Soriano Jr. tragically died of cancer that same year. Cojuangco became chairman.
He did. He started to integrate coconut oil milling and other agricultural businesses into the company, which made sense given his background. But his first reign was destined to be very, very short.
Because history intervened. February 1986, the People Power Revolution.
The EDSA revolution. Marcos is toppled from power. Cojuangco, being a close ally, flees the country on the very same plane as the Marcos family to Hawaii. And just like that, San Miguel is thrown into chaos and enters a very strange and uncertain period. We call it the interregnum.
This is Section 4, the turbulent 90s and the return of the king. Who is running the ship if the majority owner is in exile and his shares are in dispute?
The new government, under President Cory Aquino, stepped in. They formed the PCG, the Presidential Commission on Good Government, whose job was to recover ill-gotten wealth. The PCGG immediately sequestered Cojuangco's shares in San Miguel.
So they froze them.
They froze them. But the government quickly realized they couldn't run a brewery. They didn't know how to sell food or make glass bottles. So in a very pragmatic, almost ironic move, they invited Andres Soriano III, the son of the late Soriano Jr., to come back and manage the company as CEO.
That must have been incredibly awkward. Here, please run this company your family used to own, but just so you know, the government is a majority shareholder now, and we're watching your every move.
It was an incredibly difficult position to be in. Soriano III tried to make the best of it. His big strategic push was internationalization. His logic was, the Philippines is politically unstable, the ownership of our own company is disputed, we need to diversify our risk by expanding abroad.
So they started buying assets outside the Philippines.
Exactly. They went into Hong Kong, mainland China, Vietnam, Indonesia. They bought breweries, packaging plants. They also did a massive, complex deal merging their Coca-Cola operations with Coca-Cola Amatil in Australia. It was a clear attempt to transform San Miguel into a regional multinational.
But the political winds in the Philippines are always shifting, aren't they?
Yeah.
1998 comes around, a new president is elected, Joseph Estrada, and the exile returns.
Danding Cojuangco comes back to the Philippines. And in a stunning turn of events, he is re-elected as chairman of San Miguel in 1998. Soriano III resigns. The Soriano era, after nearly 80 years, is effectively over for good.
But Cojuangco doesn't come back alone. He brings a secret weapon with him. A man who, at the time, was relatively unknown to the public, but who would become the architect of the modern San Miguel.
Ramon S. Ang, known to everyone now simply as RSA.
At the time, he wasn't a household name at all.
No. His background was in engineering. He was a successful businessman in his own right, a business associate of Cojuangco's, handling things like cement plants and car dealerships. But Cojuangco saw something in him. Ang was elected vice chairman in 1999 and then president and chief operating officer in 2002.
And that's when things get really interesting.
That's when the pace of change accelerates dramatically. If Cojuangco was the political strategist who regained control, Ang was the operational genius who would completely reshape the empire.
And Ang did something that confused everyone. In the early 2000s, they went on this big acquisition spree. They bought Pure Foods Corporation from the Ayala family, consolidating the food market. They bought National Foods in Australia.
Yeah.
But then, the pivot.
The great strategic pivot. This is the part of the story that I think business students will be studying for the next 50 years. San Miguel, under Ang's direction, made a conscious decision to sell its crown jewels.
Explain what that means. They sold the things that were making the most money.
The things that were seen as the core of their identity. They sold their massive, incredibly profitable stake in the Coca-Cola bottling operations back to the Coca-Cola company in Atlanta. They sold their Australian assets, like National Foods and berry juice, to the Japanese brewer Kirin.
So they were suddenly sitting on billions and billions of pesos in cash.
A huge war chest. And the markets, Wall Street, the local analysts, the old guard, they were screaming. They said, "What are you doing? You are a food and beverage company. That's your DNA. Why are you selling your cash cows?"
And what was Ramon Ang's answer to that?
His vision was completely different. He looked at the landscape and said, in essence, food and beverage is a good business. It's stable, but it has a ceiling. The growth is incremental. If we want to grow 10x, 20x, we need to be in industries that are essential to the growth of the nation itself.
He was moving from consumer goods to heavy industry.
Exactly. Fuel, power, infrastructure.
Critics called it crazy. They said San Miguel has no experience, no expertise in running a power plant or an oil refinery or a toll road.
They called it diversification. They warned of a conglomerate discount, where the stock price would take a hit because investors wouldn't understand the new complex business. And for a while, they were right. The stock languished. People thought they had completely lost their focus.
But Ang was playing the long game.
He was making a massive all-in bet on the future of the Philippines. He basically said, if the Philippine economy grows, it is going to need more power, it will need more fuel, it will need better roads. and I'm going to own all of them.
Let's look at how that bet played out. This is Section 5, the modern era, San Miguel as the infrastructure state.
Let's start with fuel. In 2010, after a series of transactions, they acquire majority control of Petron Corporation.
Which is not just a gas station chain. It's the largest oil refining and marketing company in the entire country.
They own the only remaining major refinery in the country, in Baton. And think about the synergy here. San Miguel, with its thousands of delivery trucks for beer and chicken and hot dogs, is one of the biggest consumers of diesel fuel in the country.
So buying Petron allows them to hedge their own input costs.
That's part of it. But more importantly, energy is the absolute backbone of a growing economy. If you control the fuel, you have a hand on the throttle of national growth.
Okay, that's fuel. Then there's power. San Miguel Global Power.
This is an absolute behemoth. They went on another buying spree. They acquired the Shul coal-fired power plant, one of the biggest in the country. They got the Ilijan natural gas plant, the San Roque hydroelectric plant.
So a mix of energy sources.
A mix, yes. Though as of 2025, the source notes show they are still very heavily reliant on coal, over 60% of their power generation mix, which has drawn criticism from environmental groups. But the bottom line is, they are effectively the battery of Luzon, the country's main island. If San Miguel Global Power shuts down, Metro Manila goes dark. It's that simple.
That is a terrifying amount of influence and responsibility.
It's the very definition of critical infrastructure. And then, the part that touches the daily life of the average commuter, SMC infrastructure.
The builder role.
If you live in or around Metro Manila, Ramon Ang has fundamentally changed your daily commute. For better or worse, he's changed it. They are the company that built the Skyway system.
Specifically Skyway Stage 3, the connector.
Yes. And I want to emphasize what an insane engineering and bureaucratic nightmare that project was. Building a massive, elevated highway above existing chaotic roads through the very heart of one of the densest cities on Earth.
Connecting the North Luzon Expressway, NLEX, to the South Luzon Expressway, SLEX.
A trip that used to take 3 hours in traffic during rush hour, now it can take 20-25 minutes.
It's a game changer.
It is. They also built the TPLEX, the Tarlac-Pangasinan-La Union Expressway, which opened up northern Luzon for tourism and commerce. They built the NAIA Expressway, so you can actually get to the airport without missing your flight.
And speaking of airports, they aren't just building roads to them anymore. They are literally running them.
This is the newest frontier for them. As of September 2024, a consortium led by San Miguel, called the new NAIA Infrastructure Corps, officially took over the operations of the Ninoy Aquino International Airport.
The country's main and notoriously problematic international gateway.
They have the mandate to fix it, to modernize it, to solve the congestion. It's a huge undertaking. And at the same time, they're also building a brand new one from scratch.
The new Manila International Airport in Bulacan.
The Orosity. This is a greenfield project of staggering scale. It's not just an airport, it's a new city. They are talking about 4 parallel runways, a terminal with a capacity for 100 million passengers a year. It's a massive bet that the Philippines will become a major tourism and logistics hub for all of Asia.
So let's just recap the daily life of a Filipino in 2025 or 2026. You wake up, you turn on a light.
Likely powered by an SMC power plant.
You cook breakfast, maybe some Pure Foods bacon on a stove.
Fueled by Petron LPG.
You get in your car, which runs on Petron gasoline, and drive to work.
On the SMC built and operated Skyway.
You park at the airport, which is now managed by SMC, to catch a flight.
It is absolute, total ubiquity. And amidst all this heavy lifting building power plants and airports, they didn't forget the original business. In 2018, they consolidated the consumer side.
San Miguel Brewery, Ginebra San Miguel, and Pure Foods.
They merged them all into one giant, publicly listed subsidiary called San Miguel Food and Beverage, Inc.
So now they have 2 clear pillars, the consumer leg and the nation-building infrastructure leg.
Correct. It streamlined the corporate structure and made it easier for investors to understand the 2 different growth stories.
Now, we can't do a deep dive on San Miguel without mentioning the fun stuff. Section 6, sports, culture, and the PBA.
You absolutely cannot. You cannot talk about modern Philippine culture without talking about the PBA, the Philippine Basketball Association. And you cannot talk about the PBA without talking about San Miguel.
They were there from the beginning.
A founding member in 1975. And their strategy in sports perfectly mirrors their corporate strategy.
Dominance.
Total market coverage. They don't just own one team, they own 3 separate, distinct teams in the same league.
Let's break them down because the branding is just fascinating. First, the flagship, San Miguel Beermen.
The New York Yankees of the PBA, the gold standard. They are the winningest franchise in the league's history with, I think, 29 championships now. They represent excellence, the premium brand, the history, the legacy.
Then you have Bernig Ginebra San Miguel.
The people's team. This is pure marketing genius. Ginebra is the gin, the drink of the masses. The basketball team reflects that identity. Their famous tagline is never say die. They are known for being scrappy, for dramatic comebacks.
And they have a massive, almost religious following.
The largest in the country, by far. That fan culture was cultivated for years by their legendary player-coach, Robert Jaworski. When Ginebra plays, the arena is full. It's an emotional connection that sells millions and millions of bottles of gin.
And the third team, the Magnolia Hotshots.
This team carries the Pure Foods heritage. They target the AB market, the middle class, the families, the moms, the kids, so between the three teams.
The premium beermen, the populist Ginebra, the family-friendly Magnolia.
They cover every single demographic slice of the Filipino population. Whatever your social class, there's an SMC team for you to cheer for.
It's incredible how the corporate rivalry we talked about earlier, SMC versus Asia Brewery, played out on the basketball court, too.
Oh, the 80s were wild. Lucio Tan and Asia Brewery had their own teams. Gold Eagle, Beerhausen. The games between San Miguel and the Asia Brewery teams weren't just games, they were proxy wars. It was corporate aggression played out with elbows and hard fouls on the court.
So, bringing us to the present day. Leadership. Danding Cojuangco passed away in 2020. Ramon Ang, RSA, is the undisputed man in charge, chairman and CEO. But there's a new development as of June 2024.
The succession plan appears to be active and in motion. John Paul Elang, Ramon's eldest son, has assumed the key positions of vice chairman, president, and chief operating officer.
So the next gen is officially in place.
Yes. And unlike the turbulent 80s with the hostile takeovers and proxy fights, the ownership structure today is much more solidified. The Ang family, through their private holding company, Top Frontier Investment Holdings, owns about 62% of San Miguel Corporation.
So the Ang family is firmly in the captain's chair for the foreseeable future.
They are. Although we should always note that because of the legal fallout of the Coco Levy cases, the Philippine government still holds a significant chunk of shares, and the proceeds and dividends from those shares are legally earmarked for the benefit of the coconut farmers. That complicated history is still baked into the company's equity structure.
So after all this, what is the big picture takeaway here? We've gone from a 5-ton ice plant in Spanish Manila to a conglomerate that is literally building airports in new cities.
For me, the single biggest insight is the fundamental shift in the soul of the company. The Soriano era was what you might call gentlemanly capitalism. It was about polished international partnerships, gradual, logical diversification. It was steady and predictable.
And the Ang era.
It is audacious capitalism. It's high-risk, high-reward nation-building. Ramon Ang looked at the Philippines, a country with a massive, crippling infrastructure deficit, and he saw an opportunity that, frankly, no one else was brave enough or had the capital to take on at that scale. He tied the company's fate directly to the nation's fate.
That's the key, isn't it? If the Philippine economy fails, San Miguel fails. They can't just pick up the Skyway and move it to Vietnam.
Exactly. They are all in. As the saying goes, they have burned the ships, they are betting everything, billions and billions of dollars, that the Philippine economy will continue to grow and rise.
And here's a final thought for our listeners to chew on as we wrap up. With John Paul Ang now stepping into the top operational role, are we going to see a period of digestion? Are they going to spend the next decade just focusing on finishing and operating these massive, complex projects? Or does the DNA of the company now demand constant, relentless expansion? Is there anything left in the country to buy or to build?
That is the trillion-peso question, isn't it? When you already run the power, the fuel, the roads, the airports, and the food supply, maybe the only thing left to build is the future itself.
Something to think about the next time you're stuck in traffic, maybe on a Skyway, and you look up at that classic shield logo that's been around since 1890. The shield hasn't changed much, but the empire behind it certainly has.
It certainly has.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Drive safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.